In the July 9th Rtvik Representative Appointment Directive, or letter, Srila Prabhupada had not assigned any additional social or spiritual or material or managerial authority to the function of the Rtvik Representative of the Acharya. The only duty Srila Prabhupada had given to the Rtvik Representative of the Acharya was to conduct the material aspects of the ceremonial functions of the initiation process on behalf of him, Srila Prabhupada. These were functions that previously either Srila Prabhupada had performed himself or he had informally asked a few GBC to carry out some of these functions on his behalf on a case-by-case basis from time to time. But none of those functions had ever been formally assigned to the GBC. Therefore, he formally assigned those functions, and he also gave a new formal title to those who would perform them: the Rtvik Representatives of the Acharya. In creating this new position, he gave these men, though, no added authority, spiritually or material. They were not to have any special relations with the person who they were performing the initiation ceremony for. That post didn't create any conflict of interest. It didn't create conflict of duties or conflict of authority with the post of the GBC, the temple presidents, or sannyasis, etc. By assigning the ceremonial and material aspects of the initiation process to the Rtvik Representative, it didn't take any other duties or functions away from the GBC or anyone else. Because of this, there would be no need of changing or modifying the GBC managed system he had set up and had been setting up for the past 7 years. Rather, the Rtvik Representative system complemented the functions of the GBC. The post of the GBC and that of the Rtvik Representative were fully compatible and complemented one another. And it needs to be noted that Srila Prabhupada had selected only GBC members to perform the function of Rtvik representatives. I find this important because the Rtvik would also be a GBC member. And as a GBC, that person would retain their separate GBC authority and would have continued to execute the spiritual duties and functions that Srila Prabhupada had assigned to the GBC. And I find it of interest to note that the temple presidents were to give the recommendations for initiation to the nearest Rtvik. That would mean that in many cases, the nearest Rtvik would be the GBC man for that temple. The GBC were to oversee the spiritual welfare of the members in their zone. They were to give spiritual guidance. Actually, this is the same thing as today, but with the so-called gurus. But the main difference is that the system Srila Prabhupada had set up, the GBC will give the spiritual guidance and look after the spiritual welfare of all the members in their zone, and not just for those who they had performed the initiation ceremony for. Since in many cases the nearest Rtvik was the local GBC man, then this means that in the Rtvik Ras system, the local GBC man would be performing the initiation ceremony of the new member, and that same local GBC man would be giving spiritual guidance and looking after the spiritual welfare of the new devotees, since he would also be the local GBC. That means that if we had followed the ongoing Rtvik Ras path from the beginning, for many of those who are current gurus today, and they're also GBC, there would have hardly been any significant difference in how they would have been functioning on that Rtvik path than how they are carrying on and functioning today. If that GBC man was authorized as a Rtvik representative, they would be performing the initiation ceremony as a Rtvik. And then as a GBC, not as a guru, but as a GBC, they would be then giving all spiritual guidance, even to that same person. The only real difference is that they would be giving that spiritual guidance to all of the members in their zone, as Srila Prabhupada had instructed them to do, and not just perform those, give those functions and give the spiritual guidance just to the ones who they perform the initiation ceremonies for. They would be looking after the spiritual welfare of all the members in their zone. And again, this was the system that Srila Prabhupada had set up and asked us not to change, ordered us not to change. There would have been, and by doing this, then the GBC would be in compliance with those instructions by Srila Prabhupada, and it would make the mission so much more stronger, spiritually stronger. The only other difference would be that they wouldn't be worshipped as guru by those they perform the initiation ceremonies for. But keep in mind that when Srila Prabhupada was present, we, Srila Prabhupada's disciples, had a very high respect for the GBC members and for the sannyasis. We respected them. And for some, they actually had practically a following. Kirtanananda had a following of his own godbrothers. Vishnu Jan, one devotee not too long ago described that Vishnu Jan had sort of a rock star persona. And so many of his own godbrothers wanted his association and wanted to be on his Sankirtan party. Many of the sannyasis and GBC men had brahmachari servants, so there wasn't that much difference than how disciples see their gurus today. Oh, but what about Guru Dakshin? Because some gurus are concerned about that. And yes, it's a fact. The gurus in following the Rtvik system wouldn't have the money and material wealth they have today, but actually not really, because the GBC had authority when Srila Prabhupada was present. Just as Srila Prabhupada would simply instruct the temple president to provide funding and manpower for a project, Srila Prabhupada handed over that authority to the GBC to act on his behalf. When a preaching project was to be done, the GBC would instruct the temple presidents to provide the money and the manpower to make it happen. Like in LA, Rameshwar was the GBC when Srila Prabhupada was still present, and Rameshwar decided Los Angeles Temple should have its own Rath Yatra. So he instructed the LA Temple president to provide the money and the manpower. And we started our own Rath Yatra festival. At that time, they weren't tyrannical dictators, but they were authorized by Srila Prabhupada to act on his behalf for Srila Prabhupada's benefit. So when a wealthy person becomes a devotee and the GBC gives that person spiritual guidance and helps in engaging them in service, that person would want to donate. The GBC will direct him donate to the local temple or support a local preaching project, which are under the guidance of that GBC man. So basically, it would not be hardly any difference from today, where a guru takes the dakshin and then engages his disciples to work on a project that he wants done. The difference would be that the GBC would have at his disposal all the members in his zone, not just those who he performed the initiation ceremony for. Basically, if we had followed, or when we do finally follow, the Rtvik representative of the Acharya system, really those who are GBC and gurus now, there would be no loss or diminution for them. Rather, everything would increase. And the most important thing is that they will then be in compliance with Srila Prabhupada's orders and instructions. And the mission will become 10 times or 100 times more stronger, spiritually stronger. And ISKCON will become major player on the world stage and be able to establish Varnashram Dharma. This is now the end of part 5 in my personal story. I'm going to take a break, suggest you can do the same. And when you're ready, go ahead and tap on part 6. Hare Krishna.